I overcame severe anxiety and worry in my life. Used to struggle with it a lot and spent years figuring out what was the problem, what was underneath it all, what was the root cause. Worked with therapists for thousands of hours, coaches, learning from countless YouTube videos, podcasts, books. Finally figured out and solved it in my life, and then my superpower, if I've got one, is the ability to put lots of complex information together and explain it to people in a way that makes sense. So I started coaching people and helping people all around the world to get over their problems. I decided to record a free masterclass in order to share this information in as short a period as possible to help as many people as I can. So I recorded it on a Zoom call with a group of people who follow my work and on my mailing list. And we go through everything from why anxiety is a problem in our lives to how society makes it worse and how we can overcome it. It's all there. If after you've watched it you feel ready to dive deeper and to get underneath and get to the root cause of everything, there are details of how you can work with me, either with one-to-one coaching or group coaching, which is a much more affordable option. Also note that this was recorded, as I said, on a Zoom call. So in order to protect everybody's identity on that call, I've cut out everybody other than me on the video, but you can hear people in the background. So when you can hear noises and things going on, just know that's what it was. Whether or not you decide you want to go deeper at the end of this, if you like the video, if you feel like you got value from it, do me a favour and just click the like and or the subscribe button, and that helps me out and helps me to keep doing this and to get more free stuff out to more people. That's it. I'll let you dive in. 7 years I've been doing this for now, and a lot of the lessons come back around, and one of the big lessons that's been coming back around for me over the past few months is repetition. Like, repetition is key in all of this stuff that we're learning. We cannot repeat it enough. So for those of you who've heard any of this before, repetition is a good thing. I got an example of this. I was doing some work with ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, a few months ago, and I thought the best way for me to explain to ChatGPT my work is to upload my last book. So it's a 600-page book, and it shows everything I'd done up to a few years ago. So I uploaded the book, and it does make you laugh that like 3 seconds later, it's like, yeah, read that. It's freaky, isn't it? But when I was asking it some questions then about different bits of things I was looking into, and one of the things it said to me was, I'd recommend you read your own book again, because there's wisdom in your book that you've forgotten about. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Because whenever I go back over things, I'm like, yeah, you just forget this stuff. So that's why we need to repeat. So we'll launch in, ask any questions as we go, and then we'll pause at the end for questions as well. So anxiety, the focus of this is anxiety. It was actually, I did a survey a while ago actually, and anxiety was one of the biggest issues people are facing. So something I often say to new clients, anyone who comes for a free consultation or anything like that, is one of the privileges I get from sitting in this seat, and I've been doing this for 4 years now, coaching people all around the world, different backgrounds, is I get to see behind the curtain into lots of people's lives. And it's a gift I wish I could give to everybody, because the biggest problem we all have is we think our problems are just our problems. And I know from experience now that is just not the case. One of my favorite lines is, we're all just living the same life in different houses. Like, we're all facing the same things. And one of the reasons I like to share that is I know it makes us feel better when we know it's not just us. It's like, yeah, you know what, takes a bit of a weight off, because making everything personal to us can make it more difficult. When we know we share the same issues with other people, it's just a part of our humanity. So that's going to be a big theme of what we're talking about today. So let's go back to the start, right? The greatest hits for those who've heard it before. This all goes back, every problem we've got in our current life goes back to our childhood and the way we've been programmed since we were kids. So when we bounce out into the world, the very basic version of this is, we know instinctively as humans that we can't survive without the people we're given to.
whether that's our parents or whoever the caregivers were that we were given to when we were born. We know instinctively we can't even lift our own head. So we need these people in order to survive. So our system is so intelligent that even though we can't speak and we can't interact, it's immediately finding ways to make these people love us so that they won't abandon us and so that they'll keep us alive. That's our system is built for two things: survival and to meet our subconscious needs that we're going to come to later. Um, think of it like the other side of this. Think about yourself as a laptop. So when you buy a new laptop from the shops, it's got some basic programs on, and everything else that you want to do with your laptop, you have to program into it.
Mm.
That's what we are, all of us. Every one of us, no matter what your age is, who we are at this point in our life is as a result of all the programming we've had throughout our lives. There's some nature stuff in that, nature versus nurture, genetics, stuff passed down through genes, all different conversations around this now. But it's that plus all the programming. And that's programming from our parents, from our immediate family, from our wider family, from our friends, and then from society as a whole as we go through life. The problem we've got with anxiety is when we're kids, it's one of the emotions that we're taught is bad or negative. So when we're told not to worry about things, when we're told with the other friends of anxiety, fear and anger, don't be afraid, don't be angry, don't be sad. Our system is so clever that it knows we feel those things regardless. We can't stop those emotions. They are natural human emotions. But what we do then is start to suppress them because we go back to the love thing. I want to survive. So if these people who I'm relying on
Yes.
for survival,
Yeah.
uh, let,
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
let me mute them. But the people we're relying on for our survival, we need them to love us. And for that, we need them to accept us. So all of these things they tell us not to do, we push down. And anxiety is one of those things. We're told it's a negative thing, so we push it away. Then as we go into society, the wider world, that that lesson, that thing we're taught is repeated. So when you think about how most people talk about anxiety in the modern world, it may be changing slightly and it's changing in different areas, but generally through life, it's that anxiety is a bad thing. So therefore we should push it away. We should suppress it. And if we do feel anxious, there's something wrong with us. So if we struggle with anxiety, that's a problem and that's our thing. This ties into what I was saying before about all of us experiencing the same thing. So the problem with this all comes back to it being called negative in the first place. And what I realized many years ago is there's no such thing as a positive and negative emotion. So the first thing we want to do when we're talking about overcoming anxiety or dealing with it in our life is stop referring to it as a negative emotion because it's not. So my favorite story to highlight this is the short version. Picture you're walking through the jungle on a lovely sunny day, and there's lovely bright green leaves all around you. It's lovely, it's a great day, and you hear a twig snap in the distance. And then you just ignore it and you keep walking. And then a few seconds later, you hear footsteps. And then a few seconds later, a lion jumps out and eats you. In that process, in order to survive, the emotions of anxiety, fear, and anger are crucial. Because what anxiety is actually designed to do is when that twig snaps in the jungle, it's to make us go, what what the fuck was that? That's the point. And this is why I always say we just need to get away from calling them negative and positive emotions, because every emotion has a purpose. The purpose of anxiety is a warning sign. Then think about like if you go to its brothers, fear and anger in that environment. Fear is the thing that says run away, and anger is the thing that says fight it off. But if you personify the emotions, which I love to do, imagine talking to those emotions, anxiety, fear, and anger, and saying to them, "You're negative, we don't like you." They would reply to us saying, "How dare you?" Because we all want to feel love and happiness and joy and excitement. But without anxiety, fear, and anger, we would not be alive in order to feel those other emotions. So how dare we call them negative? And that's why, so in the last book I wrote, I was trying, and I was struggling with this as I wrote, I was trying to find a new word, language for them. So instead of saying don't call them negative, think of something else to call them. And what I came up with at the time was misunderstood and understood emotions, because I was like, well, it's like we understand love and happiness and joy, but we don't really understand anxiety and anger and fear. But it never really sat right with me. It was like that, it doesn't really work. And it was only sort of last year I came up with the reason I couldn't come up with a better description for the two of them is I needed three, not two. And what I came up with last year is I think there's three categories of emotion. There's survival emotions, there's growth emotions, and there's fulfillment emotions. But any of them can be positive or negative depending on the context. So a survival emotion, like that story, are things like anxiety, fear, anger, the things we need to keep us alive. And in the right context, used in the right way, they're really positive.
Mm.
If we're in the jungle and we're fighting a lion, we need them. Growth emotions are things like shame, guilt, jealousy. We don't necessarily need them to survive, but we need them to grow. So someone will say, well, what's the benefit of shame? And this is what I always think. If you're struggling with any emotion, think to yourself, well, it's there for a reason. So what's the point of this emotion? Things like shame. Shame is to show us, to tell us deep inside ourselves, we know something, we did something wrong, and to help us not do it again. So in the right context, used in the right way, it's a positive emotion. The problem with any of these is if they're used in the wrong way, that's why we start calling them negative. And then fulfillment emotions are the ones we all want: love, joy, happiness, excitement. But again, in the right context, one of my favorite things is think about love. Everyone thinks love is a positive emotion, but how many people, me included, have made awful decisions in our lives that have caused us loads of pain because of love? Every single human on the planet, pretty much. And yet we all want love and we all think it's a positive emotion. So that's why my big thing is now, let's rename them. Get away from calling anxiety negative. It's a survival emotion. So in the right context, we need it. So then the other side of this is, at the start we said our system is designed for two things: survival and to meet our needs. So this is Tony Robbins' need stuff. There's all kinds of human needs, but if you boil them down, there's sort of, for me, four core survival needs, and then there's two like growth needs. But the four survival ones are we need certainty and control in our life. That's probably the biggest thing we need as humans: certainty and control. We need uncertainty and variety. We need significance, or to feel special. And we need love or connection, or anxiety helps us a lot of the time to meet our needs in unhealthy ways. So if you think about what anxiety does inside our heads, it often causes us to overthink. It often causes us to stress about things, to worry about things. That is our system trying to create certainty and control. It's trying to always know what's going on. One of the reasons many of us suffer and struggle with anxiety is we were raised in environments that made us hypervigilant. So that part of our system that was designed to just look out for woods snapping in the sticks snapping in the woods is on high alert constantly. But what that's trying to do is to give us control of our environment. It's to give us certainty of what's going on. So the more we can see what's happening, the more we can be in control, the more we can be certain. So it's trying to help us meet that need. It's doing it in an unhealthy way a lot of the time, but to our subconscious, it's a benefit. It's trying to do a good thing. The second need, uncertainty and variety. If you've got serious issues with anxiety, speaking to someone the other day who's having serious panic attacks, if you have panic attacks in your life and it's that bad, it also adds variety to your life without knowing it. It adds uncertainty. But again, the thing about these needs, these human needs, is if we don't meet them in conscious and healthy ways, they will be met for us in unconscious and unhealthy ways. So when we struggle with something like anxiety, it's helping us to meet these needs in unhealthy and subconscious ways. So it's helping us have variety and uncertainty in our life, but not in a good way. The third one, significance or feeling special. This is one that when I'm coaching people often confuses. We can't really, it's hard to get our head around, hard to comprehend. We we often think that feeling significant or feeling special has to be a good thing. So it's like, oh, I feel special when I win something. It always reminds me of seeing from Friends. This, for those of you who watched Friends, remember it, because we often actually meet our need for significance and feeling special in negative ways because we're doing it subconsciously. Having serious anxiety issues, same as having serious depression issues or anything like that, can actually help us to feel special and feel significant because inside us we're saying, I've got, think about it, I've got worse anxiety than anybody else. And in a subconscious way, that's making us feel significant. The scene from Friends I remember is it was Monica and Chandler talking about something, and she always wanted to be the best, and she won a lot of the time and was the best. And whatever it was they were doing this time, she was the worst, and she couldn't cope with it. She couldn't deal with it. And it was Chandler said to her, reframe it. You're the best at being the worst at this. And it made her feel better because then she got significance from being the worst. And that's what this is like. So we're getting significance from the fact that we really struggle with this thing, which sounds so counterintuitive, but that's what our system is doing. And then the fourth one is love and connection. And again, this is something, anxiety and depression have got similarities with this. Without realizing it, if we share the fact that we have anxiety issues with people close to us, it can help us have connection and love from those people because we can get sympathy, we can get attention. And again, it's in an unhealthy way and often subconscious, but it's still helping to meet that need. So whenever we come across something that can do that with all four of the biggest needs, I always say it's like a full house in poker. Well, I guess it's four of a kind, really, but it sounds better calling it a full house. Think about it. So that's when our system is creating, we won't go into multiple characters and personalities, that's for another day, but when our system is creating our survival mechanisms when we're a kid, when it can create a part of us that meets every one of those needs subconsciously, the system's made up. It's a great day's work because now we don't need to worry about those needs. So just by having serious anxiety issues, we're helping meet all those needs and it's helping us to survive because we're always on high alert. Does that all make sense so far? Yeah. The other thing that we've got an issue with is this is a Tony Robbins thing, which I love, is that over time we all develop throughout our lives an emotional home. So think of it like a base where we always revert to no matter what's happening. It's where it's, and go back to the needs, certainty and control. You can also use the word comfort. It's where we feel comfortable and safe. So our system, even though intellectually we might think something is bad, so we might intellectually say, I don't like to feel anxious. But if we've felt anxious since we were little kids to a high level, that can develop into what our emotional home is. So no matter what's going on in our life, we will default to that feeling because subconsciously it feels safe.
Mm.
So our subconscious likes to be there. This is a massive part of the work I do with people is there's a huge difference between what we want to do intellectually in our minds and what our subconscious wants to do. Remember, your subconscious is always just trying to do two things. It's trying to keep you safe, keep you alive, and meet all of your needs. Our subconscious does not care about happiness. It's thousands of years old. We're built to live in the wild.
Mm.
So the subconscious doesn't care about happiness. One of the best ways I've seen this described once is think about your system when it was developed for survival all those years ago. It was much more important to remember which tree the lion sleeps behind than it is to remember which tree has the lovely berries on it. Because if you don't remember where the lion is, you're going to get eaten.
Mm.
But if you don't remember where the berries are, or you don't remember where the lovely birds are singing lovely songs, you can find another tree.
Mm.
As long as you're not getting eaten by a lion, you can keep looking for trees with bird song and berries. But if you get eaten by that lion, you're done.
Finished.
So our system prioritizes that. Then we jump into the modern world. The problem with all of this is the system is designed to live in a different place.
Mm.
So picture us when we were living where we humans were meant to live, out in the wild, outdoors, like other animals. That example I gave before of the lion and a twig snapping, that might happen 2, 3 times a day. And when it happens, your system goes, this is what anxiety is for. So it puts us on high alert. We look, we check whether there's a problem. If there is a problem, we react to it. If there isn't a problem, we let it go. We feel the emotion, we shake it off, we get on with our day. The problem is, and this comes back to there's nothing wrong with us. The problem is, we as humans, being the clever fuckers we are, have built a society that is not suitable for our
Mm.
systems. We're not designed to live inside a society where our healthy anxiety system is being triggered constantly. And that's what we live in now. So think about 24-hour news, social media. As the decades have gone on in all of our lifetimes, this has all got worse. Like if
Mm.
you go back, even if you go back to when I was a kid, 40 years ago, 45 years ago, but if you go before that, before TV, before radio, even when there was radio, the world was a calmer place.
Mm.
You weren't constantly being bombarded with stimulus that triggers these feelings. So one of the issues we've got is the system is being set off constantly. And instead of it being a twig someone stepping on in the jungle, it's a terrible news story. It's you scrolling through social media and you see something you don't want to see. It's not very nice. Even things like you're watching TV shows where people are getting shot and murdered and raped. Our system's like, what are you doing to me? This is not what I'm designed for. So it's constantly triggering this thing. And then if you go back to the beginning, many people, including me, that I work with, were sensitive kids, really sensitive kids. And if you're sensitive by nature, and then you plug into a world where you're constantly being stimulated with negative stimuli in in a lot of cases, that's what's triggering the anxiety again and again and again and again.
Mm.
Makes sense? So that's what leads us to think we have a problem with anxiety when we don't. Anxiety isn't the problem. Everything else around it is the problem. So that's all the background and where it comes from and what it is. And the big part that everybody wants to know is, so what you do about it. And there's a load of things in this, right? We'll probably jump around between different things, and then feel free to ask questions on it as we get through it. The biggest thing with any emotion, including anxiety, is we've been taught since we were little not to feel it because it's bad.
Mm.
So the first thing we want to do is to retrain ourselves to know it's okay to feel. Because what an emotion is technically, like this is biologically, scientifically, I'd never thought about this until I was writing the book years ago. An emotion is a chemical reaction inside our body.
Mm.
That's it. Scientifically, that's what it is. And I watched and read some stuff from a neuroscientist once that said the actual chemical reaction of any emotion if left untouched, lasts for 90 seconds. So go back to the example in the wild and think about watch any wildlife shows. When an animal in nature gets frightened and or is that warning signal, the anxiety comes up, the way they deal with it is to shake it off. They feel it, shake it off, get on with their life. They literally, and this is where somatic healing comes in. Anyone who's heard of somatic healing, somatic practices of literally feeling things and then shaking it out of your body. It's borrowed from nature, basically, or relearned from nature. So the first thing is to feel it, to allow ourselves to just, when anxiety comes up, and what many people will say to me is, well, I already feel anxiety too much. And my response to that is, I don't think that's what we're doing, including me, up until learning this stuff. What we're doing is experiencing anxiety and trying to push it away. Because we've been taught it's a bad thing, as we experience it inside us, our initial reaction is to push it away. I don't want this. And the psychoanalyst Carl Jung had a quote that I love, which is whatever we resist persists. So think about that 90 seconds, right? If we just allow it, the chemical reaction is gone in 90 seconds. But if we resist it, it persists. So we're making these emotions that we don't want, we're making them stay around by trying to push them away. And this is a really counterintuitive thing to get your head around and to embrace, and it takes practice. We need to move towards the feeling. And what that means is, in practical terms, when you're feeling anxious, stop and literally tune into your body. Come out of your head and tune into your body. Where in your body are you feeling anxiety? And then sit with it and just literally feel it. And I got to a point where when I experience anxiety, I get like a buzz. It gives me like a buzz on my skin. And I got to the point where I was like, I actually like the feeling. I like the physical feeling of anxiety. I like the physical feeling of anger. It gives me like tingles if I just sit with it and don't try and push it away. So that's the first thing, right? Because as it stands right now, whatever happens in life that triggers anxiety, we have to validate it and we have to feel it. But there's three horses to ride at the same time here. I used to say two, and I've developed it to three now. So I'll give you another example to think about to make this make sense. What I say about any feeling now is, what we feel in any situation is a memory of our past programming. So what I mean by that is, imagine a dog, right? Two people see the same dog. So I don't know how any of you feel about dogs. I love dogs. So when I see a dog, the emotion I feel is love. And that's because in my life up to this point, the programming I've had around dogs leads to me feeling that feeling when I see them. Somebody else sees a dog, the same dog, and it brings up fear in them or anxiety in them, because the programming they've had through their life around dogs has led to them feeling anxious or afraid. Maybe they were bitten by a dog when they were young. Maybe they were scared by a dog, and maybe they've had that experience a few times. So what we feel when we see that thing, and this is why when people say something made me feel something, it's nonsense. Something else to get away from is the idea that anything makes us feel. Nothing makes us feel, because if it was that dog that made us feel love, everybody who saw the dog would feel love. Or if it was the dog that made us feel fear or anxiety, everyone who saw the dog would feel fear and anxiety. The emotion we feel inside us in any moment in life is in us, not from the external world. Make sense? So that's what I mean about it's a memory. The feeling we feel in any given moment is a memory of our past programming, which is why this is the first two horses. So that doesn't mean the feeling we feel is invalid. It's absolutely valid. So the first thing is to make sure we feel the emotion, feel the anxiety when it comes up. And at the same time, know that as a grown up, we are now in charge of the programming. So over time, we can reprogram our system to feel differently about this stimulus, whatever it is. So think about the dog example. You can go from being afraid of dogs to loving dogs over time. But what you've got to do along the way, and this is why it's riding the first two horses, is feel the emotion, whatever emotion's coming up to begin with. You feel that every time, whilst you reprogram your system to tell your system it's safe. And we can feel something else now. The third horse in all of this, which is somewhere I've gone wrong over the years, and I think because you can go too far the other way, is to get stuck inside something. So when we've felt an emotion, and then when we've done some reprogramming, it's also really important then to change our state and move past it. Because otherwise we can get stuck in just trying to feel and just trying to reprogram. And we can't do that in the moment all at once. That the process of reprogramming takes time. So we want to do things like borrow the stuff or relearn the stuff from nature. We want to shake it off. Anxiety, often the way to help process anxiety in your body is to move. So physical movement, change your state. If you find you're in a highly anxious state, and you can play around with this. One of my big things with any of this work is play around with it in your own life to make it work for you. That's crucial. So what works for me might not necessarily work for you. You've got to experiment in your own life to figure out what works. So it may be some days, depending on the context, depending on where you are, depending on what's happening, maybe the first thing you want to do is just change your state. Go and shake it off, run it off, and get on with your day. Maybe you're feeling anxious, you're in a meeting. But at the times when you can feel it, we want to feel it. We want to go through a reprogramming process, and then we want to shake it off. I'll give you a couple of practical things to help with this. One, which is hugely important when it comes to anxiety, is breath. Your breath work. So some of you may have already done breath work exercises. There's loads of different things out there. But when we feel anxiety come up inside our system, what it's often going to do is increase the rate of our breath and make us breathe up into our chest. So the best thing you can do in the moment is to slow down your breath. Find whatever breathing exercise. There's loads of different ones out there. There's box breathing where you take slow breath, then 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. There's others where it's intermittent. You breathe in for 6 seconds, you hold for 2 seconds, you breathe out for 10 seconds. Find a system of breathing that works for you and calms your system. Because when you can do that in the moment, that will help to reduce the next part we'll talk about, the nervous system. What's going on when anxiety is triggered is your nervous system is fired up. It's going into fight or flight. And a lot of us in the modern era are spending a huge amount of our time in this fight or flight situation. And what we want to do before we do anything else is calm our whole system down. So one of the ways I love talking about this now is think about it like traffic lights. When your system is feeling really calm, you're green. When you're slightly off, you're amber. And when you're totally fucked, you're red. Your job, whenever you're in amber or red, well, the first thing is to become aware of it, right? So to observe it, become aware of it. If you're in red, your only job is to get to amber. And if you're in amber, your only job is to get to green. So when I'm talking about reprogramming our system, the reprogramming comes in green mainly. Because otherwise, we're trying to fight our fight or flight system when what we just need to do is calm down. So breathing can really help you get from red to amber to green. And then the other thing to look up, I can give you some examples of them, but there's all kinds of videos online, TikTok, YouTube, you'll find them wherever you want to look. Go on Google. Is vagus. So our nervous system basically is all linked to the vagus nerve, which is a big nerve that runs down the middle of our body. There are loads of exercises you can do that calm the vagus nerve, and that soothes the entire nervous system. So things like, and these sound mad, and I often say this as a little caveat, especially for the men in the group. These are the type of things that if someone was saying to me 10 years ago, I'd have laughed at and gone, what are you saying to me? The world's moving on, and this stuff works. So I share it. Things like rubbing your earlobes, stroking your face, rubbing your arms like this. And what I was thinking about as I was learning these things is, as I was doing, I was like, think about the things that soothe babies. It's anything that you think would soothe a baby. Even if you don't look anything up, try that. Stroking your own head, stroking your arms, stroking your face, even making a humming sound. Because if you vibrate your lips and go like brrr, that stimulates the vagus nerve. One I saw last week, which I didn't know about, if you put like a cold ice pack or cold frozen peas on the back of your neck, again, that stimulates the vagus nerve and it cools things down. It's one of the reasons ice baths and things like that help. But there's mixed stuff about that. And again, this is an experimental thing because sometimes a cold bath will shock your nervous system and it will make it worse. Sometimes it goes through the way. I think it depends on the individual. So there are things to think about. Think about the traffic lights. Going from if you're really struggling with anxiety, if you're in the moment and you're losing control of it, think about the traffic lights. Where am I? Am I in amber? Am I in red? Okay, how do I get back? Just focus on that. Breathe in and vagus nerve exercises to get me back. And then the bigger picture stuff is one of the I vividly remember this years ago because most people misunderstand anxiety. Lots of the things you'll see in the normal world are really bad. It's really bad advice about how to overcome it. So I remember seeing this young lady on breakfast TV. It must be 10 years ago now, 15 years ago. Well intentioned as everybody is, but she was starting a campaign to try and get clapping stopped in theatres because there are people in society whose anxiety, they suffer so badly with anxiety that clapping triggers them. And this is you see this a lot now. When people are faced with things, we hear that word a lot. I was triggered. They get triggered. What we try and do as a society is remove the trigger. It's the complete wrong thing to do. Because think about it. If you struggle with anxiety and your system is constantly on high alert, if you remove one of the things that triggers you, your system will just find something else because you haven't solved the root problem. It's still dysfunctional, it's still dysregulated, it's still looking for these problems because you're on high alert.
Mm.
So it'll just find something else. And the word counterintuitive is key. The counterintuitive thing is to move towards the things that trigger our anxiety. But this, again, is an experimental thing everyone has to do. You have to do it at the right pace because if you do it too fast, it will set off your system too much and it will make things worse. So what we want to do, you may have heard of exposure therapy. This is what exposure therapy is for. You do a little bit at a time and you allow your system. So think of the traffic lights, whatever it is that raises anxiety, you do a little bit of it. You sit with it, you feel it, you calm your system, you do the vagus nerve exercises, you breathe, and then you reprogram your system, say this is safe. And the next time you do a little bit more. And next time you do a little bit more. And you gradually do it at whatever pace works for you until that same thing no longer triggers you in the way it did before. Does that make sense? Because if we try, like, so with the clapping thing in theaters, you can ban clapping in theaters But all that will happen for the people who struggle with that is it will it will flip somewhere else.
Mm.
Might sound like a mad analogy, but I've got the same thing about them banning gambling advertising in sports. It doesn't solve the root cause of the problem. And this work that I do is all about solving the root cause of the problem. Think about it. If you don't have a gambling problem, you can see as many adverts for gambling as you want, and you will never put on a bet.
No.
So removing the gambling advert isn't the solution. The solution is for all the people with gambling problems to solve the root cause of the gambling, which is childhood trauma, usually. It's the same with anxiety. And everything we're talking about applies to any other of the emotions that we're taught are bad, any of the survival or the growth emotions. We've got to feel it. We've got to move towards it slowly. We've got to reprogram ourselves. Two other things to think about are that often what I've learned over the years is our emotions can be in layers. So often we'll have an emotion that we're feeling really strongly, and we feel like intellectually, I don't like this emotion. But what it's actually doing is still serving a purpose for us because it's covering up another emotion underneath that we want to feel even less. So something to think about as you're experiencing anxiety is this covering something else up for me? Am I worrying so much about this thing, or am I so anxious about this thing because there's something underneath? Often, speaking from a man, so think for the men on the call, but this may apply to the ladies as well. We've been taught that we should never feel sad, we should never cry, we should never feel hurt. So often below one of the emotions like anxiety or anger or fear will be an emotion like sadness or hurt or loss, which subconsciously we want to feel even less than we want to feel anxiety. So often what you'll find and what I've found is if you allow yourself to fully feel the anxiety, it will reveal another emotion underneath it. And then we need to go through the same process with that emotion. So it's another question to
Mm.
ask yourself when you feel anxious about something, whatever's going through your mind, however it's manifesting itself, think about that. Is there something else going on here? And if you can't get it intellectually, which often we can't, go through this process and allow, once you've felt the anxiety, just allow anything else to come up that's there and observe that too. The last thing on all of that stuff is something I love, which is go back to what I was saying before about people who really struggle with anxiety tend to be people who are highly sensitive. So we're taught then that we have a problem and we're the issue. What I've realized over the years is it's nonsense. People who are highly sensitive have actually got a superpower. And this reference might not land with all of you, but there's a superhero movie, or well, it's an old cartoon, but it's movies in the modern day called The X-Men.
Mm.
Some of you know about that. So the X-Men is a story of kids effectively to come into adulthood who have got something wrong with them. They're labeled as mutants until they meet this guy, this professor, who teaches them that what they've got isn't a disability. What they've got isn't a mutation. What they've got is a superpower. But what they need to do is learn how to use the superpower properly. Because
Mm.
if you learn how to use the superpower properly, it's a power. But if you don't, it causes problems in your life. When I
Mm.
watch those movies now, this is all I see. All of these issues that people have. Being highly sensitive is a superpower, but we need to learn how to use the superpower to our
Mm.
advantage, to our benefit. So I'll give you an example from my life. I am able, it's one of the reasons I'm a good coach. I am able to feel what other people feel just by sitting next to them. So I can be sitting next to my girlfriend on the couch and I'll just suddenly turn to it and say, what's wrong? And she'll say, what do you mean? And I'll say, I can feel that something has changed. No one has said a word, nothing. And she'll say to me, well, actually, yeah, I was just, this thing's happened for me. And how, how could you possibly know that? I was just thinking about this thing and I can feel that. Now, without doing all this work, that causes you loads of problems in life because you're constantly going and think about where that comes from. Think about where the superpower comes from. It comes from being a child who's constantly monitoring the world around him, trying to make sure he's safe. Is my mum happy? Is my dad happy? What do I need to do to make this world okay? But used in the right way, working as a coach, it's a superpower because I can be speaking to somebody and they can say something and I can say there's something behind that. And they say, what do you mean? And I can just feel that there's something behind what they said. And then it allows us to dig into it and solve a problem that no one else can solve. But without doing the work, it stays as something that just causes me trouble in life. Make sense? And then the last thing is to complete the circle, to come back to the beginning, which is repetition. Everything I'm talking to you about, always remember that whatever age you are, we have been programmed to be the way we are for decades. We were programmed as kids, and then we've been practicing that same programming in our life, our entire life. So to expect to change any of this stuff overnight is flawed. And this is somewhere I've gone wrong in time. And I've realized even when I do that, I've been doing this work for 7 years. Often when I say that, what I've caught myself doing is there's a silent implication in what I'm saying, which is when I'm doing it in my own life, I've been doing this work for 7 years. The silent implication is, and therefore I should be better by now. I shouldn't have to deal with this shit anymore. But that's not how it works. I saw a great example of this the other day. A guy called Alain de Botton, who runs the School of Life, who I love. If you don't know the School of Life, you don't know him, look him up. He's written 70 books on all this stuff. He's got a YouTube channel with millions of subscribers. He must be, I'd guess he's 20 years older than me. He's been doing this work for decades. And I watched him on a podcast. And he ended the podcast being asked, so, having done all this work, are you sorted now? Like, you just breeze through life? And he was like, no. What I do know is I know myself better. And I've learned all of these ways of dealing with the world better than I used to. But the first thing he said in the interview was the most important one, I thought, which was, if you think about how we've become the people we are today, think about language learning. So when you were a kid, you just started learning how to speak English. Nobody sat you down and said, right, this is how you speak English. We just picked it up. That's exactly what's happened with all this other stuff. We've been programmed in exactly the same way. Now, imagine now at each of our ages, we say, I want to learn another language that I don't speak. So I want to learn French. Imagine how long it would take to learn French to the level you speak English. I was in France last week and one of my cousins showed me a comedian he loves. My cousin's lived there for 15 years. And this comedian is famous in France, but we would never have heard of him because of what I'm about to tell you. He does his shows bilingually. So he does half his show in French and half in English, bouncing between the two. And he was funny, but I thought he was okay. But my cousin thought he was hilarious. And it was because his whole act is about how he's been living in France for 30 years and he still can't speak French properly. He's still like, and to me and you, he's just unbelievable. He's doing stand-up comedy in French, for Christ's sake. Like, he's unbelievable. But he still says things to French people that make them laugh at him. And they go, oh, you're an idiot. That's not how we say it. And he's been learning French for 30 years living in France. So for us to think we can overdo all it, outprogram all of this programming within a few years, it's a flawed way of thinking. That doesn't mean it's hopeless. We can make loads of progress. But one of the things I come back to a lot with this fundamental principles, taking radical responsibility. So if we want to solve anything in our life, it's on us now to do it. We have to do the work. If we don't do the work, it's not going to change. And at the same time, being kind to ourselves. knowing that it's going to take time and we can make progress and at the same time know that there's more to do. That's the ongoing process the whole time. One of the things going back to one of the lessons I'd forgotten in my own book, which ChatGPT reminded me of, is I put two analogies in the book about saying doing this work, we're forever a student. As long as we can keep the mindset that we're a student, we're golden. And the two stories are both about the guitar. If you ask Eric Clapton what he does for a living, he says he's learning how to play the guitar. Noel Gallagher gave a gift of a guitar to his daughter, and when he gave it to her, he said, "You can never complete this game." And that's this work. We can become brilliant. We can become brilliant at speaking a new language. We can get really good at it. But fundamentally, the stuff that's been programmed into us has been there for decades. So accepting who we are and that it's just a part of us that we're working on is a huge part of this. Being kind to ourselves. I feel anxiety. I feel anxious quite often. That's okay. I'm working on it. I'm doing these things, and then notice and give ourselves credit as we take steps forward and we feel better. Give ourselves credit for the work we've done and then observe the things we could still do. That all makes sense? There we go. I've been speaking for 50 minutes. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any observations?
Does it imply you're coming from the foundation of good input? So don't know how to put it. I was damaged in my childhood home, and people about me knew what was going on, were almost complicit in it. So all the behaviors were all skewed. They were wrong. They weren't right. I wasn't getting, it was completely screwed up. So how can I tackle one thing like anxiety when I'm not coming from a stable base?
Well, firstly, I'm really sorry to hear that, and it's important. The first thing to do when you've had any issues in childhood, and we all have to different degrees, is to allow yourself to feel and allow yourself that not you as a grown up, but you as a little child, the little girl who lives inside you. There's a reasonable chance, depending on what type of work you've done in the past, that she's never been validated for the fact that what happened to her when she was a little kid wasn't her fault and it wasn't fair. And a huge amount of the wider work around just anxiety is allowing things like that. So one of the emotions I've had to do a lot of work with is self-pity. Because think about kids, we're not allowed to feel sorry for ourselves. I watched this even in my family over the past few years with my niece and nephew. I'd see my sister or my mum or my dad, her grandparents. She'd be looking miserable sitting on the couch. She's 19 now, but this story's from when she was about 16. And people would walk in and say, "What have you got a face on you for?" And she'd say, "I'm just not feeling great." And they say, "Well, what have you got to not feel great about? Your life's amazing." And like, this is the problem. All of our emotions are invalidated. No one means anything bad by it. We're just passing this stuff down the generations. So fundamentally, what our job is as a grown up, and again, this goes back to, especially for the men on the call, is this is very difficult for men, especially in older years, to comprehend a lot of the time, is that we are reparenting the little boy and girl that live inside us. Because that's all of our problems belong to the little child inside us that didn't get what they needed when we were kids. So our job as a grown up, and it's almost separate yourself. Separate yourself as a grown up from the child that was damaged. And your job as the grown up is to heal the wounds of the child that was damaged. And if there was a huge amount of damage, what I've seen over the years is it's just step by step. Start wherever you can and start working through it. And that may be the first stepping stone, may be feeling sorry for yourself, giving that little girl as much sympathy and as much validation as she needs to feel safe. There's all kinds of things you can do for that, which I can talk to you about separately if you'd like to. But there's a guy called Edward Mannix, which this is deep work that took me years to get to. And again, if you'd have gone back to me 7 years ago and gone, do this work, I'd have laughed. And some of the people I coach privately, I haven't taken them to this point yet because they're not ready for it. It's real deep inner child work where you literally sit and visualize the child and bring the child outside of yourself, and then just effectively just give them sympathy. You say to them, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. And you go through all of the different things that happened to them. And you just say to them, so sorry this happened.
So if you can do that, is it sort of meaning that you've got to start there with addressing the child and go there before you can start doing the anxiety work?
No, not at all. So this is where it comes to experimenting in your own life. And everybody's different in this case. I always say we're all built on the same operating system. Humans are all the same at one level, but we've all got a completely unique story. No one else has got a story like ours. So one of my issues with a lot of people online is what tends to happen is however someone changed their life, they become evangelical about, which is normal. And they say to everybody else, this is what you need to do to make yourself better. But the danger with that is that will obviously work for some people. And then you get testimonials and everyone says, this is great. But for the people it doesn't work for, they're just left feeling they're even more damaged and there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to stress constantly is, and I think the best people I learn from online do the same thing, just because something works for me doesn't mean it will necessarily work for you. I can only share the stuff that's worked for me. I can share the stuff I've tried that I don't feel like it's worked. But at this point, I couldn't even tell you what stuff worked and what stuff didn't. I've done so much. Do you know, if you think of it like, I've got loads of different analogies for this, but think of it like a big barrel that's full of crap and it's been filling up with crap for decades. When you come to, if someone says to you, clear out that barrel, you've just got to start at the top. Take out whatever box you can and start working your way down. But as you're doing that, the way I did it might not be the way it would work for you. But to answer your question directly, in my opinion and in my experience, you can do both at the same time.
Right.
So you can address your day-to-day anxiety issues with some of the things we've been talking about at the same time as looking at the deeper underlying stuff. So the work I do, like the wider coaching stuff, is all about you. We basically use day-to-day things to go deeper. And there's all kinds of exercises to go deep underneath everything and to solve the root problem.
Are you talking like a thread between the two?
Absolutely, yeah. So almost I would say 100% of the time, right? But maybe not 100% of the time. You can, whatever issue you're having in your day-to-day life now as a grown-up, you can trace it back to something that happened in your young years at some point, and you can just see the same thing. The guy I mentioned before, Alain de Botton, he's got a great line, which is something like, the catastrophe we think is ahead of us isn't. The catastrophe was years ago. And we need to go back and deal with the catastrophe from years ago. I'll use a great example of, we'll have all felt this in relationships. So your partner or ex-partner does something that pisses you off. Objectively speaking, whatever it is, think right now of the smallest thing someone has done that pisses you off. Objectively, whatever that is, and I've got some wild ones, objectively, it's not that thing that's pissing you off.
No,
It just isn't. One of mine is literally, and talk about the hypervigilance thing, I can walk into a kitchen And it's only the kitchen this applies to. This does not apply to other rooms in the house, right? I can walk into a kitchen when I'm sharing with another person, especially a romantic partner, and they could have cleaned the entire kitchen and the kitchen is spotless. But if I see some liquid on the kitchen counter, whatever liquid it is, it sets me off. I can't believe it. My whole system goes, how could this person do this? How could you leave that? Think about that objectively. I'm 45 years old in 2 weeks. Why is that such a big deal?
Mhm.
That has got nothing to do with there being a little bit of tea on the kitchen counter. And it's got everything to do with something in my childhood, which is the stuff I've been working on.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
My pleasure. While anyone else is thinking of a question, I remembered someone emailed in a question, so I'll answer that. He said, just for context, I started reading your book earlier this year about sorting out our low self-worth, discovering my different characters, but for now I'm just scratching the surface. The question is, do you see anxiety and within that a fear of failure as a natural and almost inevitable consequence of low self-worth? I should have thought about the answer to this before I read it out, shouldn't I? Before we start the call. Do I see anxiety and a fear of failure as a natural and almost inevitable consequence of low self-worth? So hopefully what we've talked about already will answer the question about anxiety. I don't see anxiety as a consequence of low self-worth. I see anxiety as a perfectly healthy human emotion.
Mm.
Full stop.
Mm.
And if we can just, if I could wave a magic wand for all of us, it would be to go back to childhood and to be taught that all of these emotions are fine. Because if we could just jump to that place, all of our problems would just go away. Because when anxiety comes up inside us, we just go, I just feel anxious. It's okay. It'll go away now. That's it. But all of this stuff we're talking about, all of these years of work, all of this trying to deprogram, reprogram, it's all because when we were a kid, we were taught that we shouldn't feel anxious or any of the other survival emotions or the growth emotions because they're all bad, they're all negative when it's nonsense. So when Krista's referring to what I talk about in the book and in a lot of the work is all of the issues we've got, I realized, and my theory is there are all these symptoms, are high level symptoms, whatever the problems are in our life. And at the root of that is the feeling of not being good enough. So it's actually the other way round than it's phrased in the question. I think it's because we've got low self-worth that we think anxiety is a bad thing. And we think it means we're not good enough. So I don't think it's an inevitable consequence of low self-worth. I think we have anxiety anyway. It's a normal, healthy emotion. And because we don't feel good, it links into the fact that we don't think we should feel anxious. And that ties into everything we've been talking about, including the way society deals with it. Because think about even that lady I mentioned who's on Breakfast TV, and she's starting a campaign, well-intentioned campaign to get rid of clapping, to tell people to stop feeling anxious. What's the silent implication in the campaign? That there's something wrong with feeling anxious. So we need to help everyone stop feeling anxious. You're like, no, we don't. We can't get rid of anxiety.
No.
It's a flawed strategy. We need anxiety. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But just think of it like the superpower. We need to learn how it's helpful in its rightful place. And everything else, whenever we're suffering with anxiety, it's because of our dysfunctional programming we've had. Make sense? Let's bring up any other questions for anyone. No, we all good? God, we're gonna finish earlier than I thought. I thought you'd be full of questions. I'll take that as a compliment. See? And this is the thing about once you've started repairing your self-worth, I can just make up whatever story I want. You could all not be asking questions because you were bored shitless and you thought it was rubbish. But I just tell myself the story. It's because I've done a really good job, so I've already answered all the questions. I realized this years ago when COVID hit and we started doing things by Zoom. I realized it was a really powerful moment for me that people really concentrating and listening to you on a Zoom call have the exact same facial expression as if they're bored. So when
Really?
we've got low self-worth, we see the faces doing this,
And you take it.
and our voice goes, the anxiety voice
Yeah.
goes, perfect example to put at the end. The anxiety voice goes, see, they're all bored, do something, dance, jump up and down. But once you've prepared your self-worth enough, you just change the story, which is a
Yeah.
huge part of the work I do, the stories we tell ourselves. We can tell ourselves whatever story we want. So if I
Yeah.
tell myself, oh, all these people are really engaged,
Mm.
I feel good. If I tell myself all these people are bored, I feel bad. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to tell myself the good story.
Yeah.
Over time, it'll figure itself out, won't it? If everyone's bored, your business will go nowhere. If everyone's engaged, people will come back and work with you.
Mm.
All makes sense. Oh, I said I was gonna. Are you all okay with me just mentioning the group coaching that's starting next week? It'll only take a couple of minutes with a few of us.
Mhm.
So for anyone, if anyone does want to take any of this and go deeper, I only work with a handful of private coaching clients now, and I've put my prices up because of that, because it takes a lot of energy to work one-on-one with people. But I'm conscious that that puts it out of most people's price range. The lowest price package to work with me one-on-one is £1,500 a month. So if anyone watching this here live or on the recording is interested in one-on-one coaching, get in touch with me. We can talk about details and chat about it in a free call. But I'm always conscious I want to make this stuff accessible to as many people as I can. So I'm setting up a group we're going to start, probably going to start next Tuesday, hopefully, which is £300 a month. And it's basically taking people through my entire work. We're going to do it over 3 months. So it will be £900 in total for the 3 months.
Mm.
If you pay up front, it's £800 instead of 900 with a discount. And you basically get lifetime access to the online course that I recorded a few years ago. And that has got 30 hours of coaching in it, which is basically 6 months worth of coaching, which you can keep forever to go over. And the idea is I take you through that course and I show you all of the stuff I've done. I'll update it as we're going, because obviously I've learned more since I recorded that course a few years ago. Everything I've learned since then. I'll go through all the exercises. There's all kinds of exercises I've learned and developed over the years that help us go deep underneath this stuff and get to the root, with the intention that by the end of the 3 months, you've got a full understanding of all this stuff. You know what's underneath all your problems, and you've got a good basis to go off on your own if you want to, and practice it in your life. This is not, and I'm again stress this a lot, none of this work, and don't believe anybody anywhere else tells you they can sell you something and you'll fix yourself and you'll fix all these problems in a few days. I can, even the weekend event, I can teach you everything in a weekend intensively. But if you leave that weekend and you never implement any of that work, it's not going to touch your life. Say, I always use the analogy with personal training. You can you go on a fitness camp and you can feel great when you leave the fitness camp. But if you then go back to just eating pizzas and kebabs every day, you're not going to get fit. So for anybody who's interested in going further with any of this stuff, drop me an email on the address that you've already had from me, and I'll tell you more about it. I can share more details. I'll send you a link with full details of this anyway afterwards. And go into it if you decide to join, knowing that this is a long-term game.
Mm.
This is something, if we want to change our lives, we have to commit to. And that doesn't mean, think about it like training. It doesn't mean you have to go to the gym every day. It just means we have to start making gentle changes in our lives and build up over time. All good?
Mhm.
That raise any questions? Anyone thought of anything else they want to ask? No?
No.
Very well behaved bunch tonight. No, I know a few of you quite well. It's unlike you.
It's obviously quality, not quantity.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. I always appreciate people following my stuff and being interested in this stuff. Hopefully it's helped in some way. If once you've absorbed this, as I said, I'll I'll probably share the recording of this tomorrow, so you can watch it back if you want to.
Mm.
Often when people have slept on these things or they've thought about it more, questions come up. If any questions come up after the event, drop me an email on the same address that you've got, and I'll come back to you and answer whatever I can. All good?
Dead on. Thank you.
Can I
Thank
just
you,
say something
everybody.
quickly?
Sorry?
Can I just say something quickly?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Chris, you mentioned like I was on your course, and I just want to say to everybody, like if you're thinking of doing it, because being with Paul for that course made a huge difference to my life, and I carry his work with me big time and use it loads. It is an ongoing journey, but
Good.
well worth working with.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm.
It was as always, it was a pleasure to work with you, and it's been a pleasure to know you since and watch you develop. So
Mm.
thank you. It's a lovely way to end, isn't it?
Mm.
Right. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Take care of yourselves. See you soon.
Thank
Cheers, Kurt. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.